morning, everyone. My name is Kimberly Bean. I am the K-8 supervisor of math and science and a little bit of technology thrown in. My email address is at the bottom of this first screen, so if you ever needed to email me, it's there. While we are talking, you can enter questions in the Q&A, and then at the end of the presentation, I will go back through and answer the questions in the Q&A. I try to anticipate them as best as I can, so I might answer them along the way, but I will definitely go back at the end and check. I want to phrase this before I even get started and just say that there are many paths to graduation. So when we're talking about selecting a middle school math course, we are not determining your child's career path at this moment. If your child is in 5th grade, let's not put too much pressure on this moment and just realize we're just choosing a middle school math course. And there are many different ways and many different options, once you get to Columbia High School as well. So why are we even talking about choosing a math class when we don't choose a language arts class or a science class or a social studies class? And part of it's because we have this district Board of Ed access policy that says students in elementary, middle school, or high school can choose, they can have access to and the ability to choose their educational programs or select from options of academic levels. In middle school, the only subject where we have academic levels, and I personally don't even necessarily see it as levels. I see it more as different course options, but at any rate, the access policy works the same in that students can still choose which course they would like that's offered for their grade level. So that's why we're here in mathematics. This metaphor came to me earlier today and I added it to my presentation. So I just know that it's not as refined as maybe as other parts of my presentation that I've done before. But I wanted to talk about a keystone. And that is, this is the science part of me now. I'll put my science hat on. And that is when you have an arch, a stone arch, the reason it works is because of compression, right? Everything's pushing together and that's what holds it together. And you need every single one of those stones in order for the arch to be successful. So you have the stones on the left side and you have the stones on the right side, and all of them are pushing up against this keystone. And the keystone has to be, it's usually bigger and thicker and stronger than the other stones because it is at the center and it's at the top and it's bearing the weight of all of the pressure of all of the stones. And that's why it's called a keystone, right? Because it's the key to holding the entire arch up together. So you say, okay, Kim, that's a wonderful explanation of arches. Why do you bring that up? I bring that up because K-12 mathematics, let's think of it tonight like it is this arch. And on the left-hand side of this arch, we have kindergarten through 8th grade math courses. And just like with the bridge, we need every single one of those courses, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, all the way up through 8th grade. We need all of those courses. If you pull one out, the bridge weakens or it might even fall down, right? The arch might collapse. And on the right-hand side of the keystone, we have the high school courses. And so you're thinking like, geometry, algebra 2, pre-calc, calculus, and so on. And I'm even going to throw in physics and chemistry in that mix. So we have the left side, K-8, we have the right side, these high school courses, and the keystone, all of those courses are pushing together for this keystone course. And that is everything on the left side is building towards and leads up to that keystone course. And everything on the right-hand side is dependent upon that keystone course. And I want us to think a lot about when you're considering what course to choose for your child, it's like that keystone course is the most crucial thing. And it's what we in the math department base all of our thinking and instruction on. And that is the importance of Algebra 1, because Algebra 1 is the keystone for K-12 mathematics. Everything we do in K through 8 is preparing students to be successful in Algebra 1. And everything that comes after Algebra 1 is in some way dependent upon students' fluent, flexible understanding of Algebra 1. Not just they got through the course of Algebra 1, but they truly have to understand it. That message can sometimes get lost, and we can lose the fact that Algebra 1 is the key course here. It is the keystone. And whether a child takes it in 7th grade, 8th grade, or 9th grade, we want them to be in the best readiness prior to taking it, and we want them to be the most successful when they do take it. All right, that was a heck of a lead up for let's talk about what the course is. You should have received an email the week before break going over what are each of the courses that are offered for each grade level. And so here, it was a chart that looked like this. It had some more details on it, but it looked basically like this. My guess is most of the people on tonight are parents of 5th graders. And so I might lean a little bit more on that side of the discussion because that's usually who comes to this the most. When you're looking at the two choices of grade 6 math and grade 6 pre-algebra, grade 6 math, like grade 4 math, grade 5 math, grade 6 math, all of them follow the state and national standards that are set out for that grade level. This is what is said, student and textbooks, everything's built around these standards. And this is what a 6th grader is supposed to learn in the United States of America, or specifically in New Jersey. The difference between 6th grade math and 5th grade math or 4th grade math is that in the elementary school, we have 90 minutes of math instruction per day. In the middle school, we have 45 minutes of math instruction per day. So that's, we're cutting it. There's a little bit extra time in another place, but in general, we're cutting instructional time almost in half for math. And so know that if they've been comfortable with the 90 minutes per day, there's going to be a pace change just moving into 6th grade because we're going from 90 minutes to 45 minutes a day. But it is just the grade level standards that is expected across the country. Grade 6 pre-algebra is a different course. You'll hear talked about as acceleration. And that's because in this course, students are learning all of grade 6 math plus all of grade 7th math according to the standards. So they're learning all the grade 6 standards, all the grade 7 standards. That is 2 courses in 1 year in 45 minutes per day. It is fast, and it's in normal instruction. Let's say in grade 6 math, you would get something like teach, practice a day, like you teach a day, teach a second day, then practice. And so there's time to digest it and sort of let it marinate and soak in. But in something like pre-algebra, where we are doing 2 courses in 1 year in 45 minutes per day, it is teach every single day. It's at least 1 new thing a day, usually 2 new things a day. So a lot is happening in that course. Just as a rough estimate, I would say that it is a comfortable place for about 25% of our students. Just throwing that out there. Now, we make a lot more than 25% feel successful and feel good about it. But in general, it is, I'm just going to say comfortable, and they understand it the first time we say something for about 25% of our students. All right, looking at the 7th grade course, the 7th grade options, we have grade 7 math, which is just based on the grade 7 standards. Then we have a course called grade 7 pre-algebra, which is very similar to grade 7 math, except we have this eye on getting these students ready for Algebra 1. So we give them some additional reasoning challenges, some more less friendly numbers to work with. And we introduce them to some of the grade 8 standards. We don't test them on the grade 8 standards, but there are some grade 8 standards that lead directly into Algebra 1 and connect nicely with 7th grade. So we bring those in as a way to sort of help bridge those students for Algebra 1. And then the third option is Algebra 1 for grade 7. And this is another acceleration course because it is combining 2 courses into 1 year. And it's combining grade 8 introduction to algebra and the high school Algebra 1 standards. And then in 8th grade, we have a grade 8 introduction to algebra, which is the grade 8 standards. We have Algebra 1, which is grade 8 and Algebra 1 standards combined. And then we have geometry, which is the grade 10 high school geometry standards and curriculum. A couple things I want to point out in this arrangement, and because I always get these questions of, wait, what is the difference between grade 6 pre-algebra and grade 7 pre-algebra? And they are very similar in that they are preparing students for Algebra 1, and the outcome that's expected is the end of 7th grade mastery. That is what we're expecting. The difference is the grade 6 pre-algebra is moving much faster. We're teaching 2 full courses in 1 year, and the grade 7 is spending more time with grade 7 content and learning it in more higher applications and unfamiliar question types and introducing some of those grade 8 pieces with it. It is a purposeful redundancy in the program, meaning it is there as a do-over. If a child struggles in grade 6 pre-algebra and they either moved down during the year into grade 6 math, or at the end of the year, they're like, okay, I just did grade 6 pre-algebra, but I didn't really master that very well. We suggest they then take grade 7 pre-algebra so that they're getting some of that content again in extended circumstances and extended contexts, and introducing some of the 8th grade standards with it. So that is a purposeful redundancy so that there is an opportunity for them to improve their readiness for Algebra 1, because that's really what our goal is to make sure that by the time they take Algebra 1, they have everything they need entering into that course. So that's why that repetition is there. They're not exactly the same. They're somewhat different, but they both are improving students' readiness for Algebra 1. Grade 6 pre-algebra goes super fast. Grade 7 takes more time with it and extends the learning more. The next redundancy you'll see, purposeful redundance, is Algebra 1. This is the exact same course, whether you take it in 7th grade or 8th grade, in that it is a combination of learning all of the grade 8 introduction to algebra and the high school Algebra 1 standards in 1 year. It is a lot, because in addition to being 2 courses in 1 year, Algebra 1, especially in the second half of the year, is some pretty complex, abstract stuff to work with. And so that's there for the same reason, in that you could take it in 7th grade, and if you weren't successful with it, you have an opportunity to take it again in 8th grade. And you say, well, why would I do that? Why would I take this course twice? Because we want you, because it is that keystone course. It is going to underlie students' success in all of their later math courses and some of their science courses. And so we want to make sure that students are having the greatest opportunity to learn this. And we have students, obviously we have students who take Algebra 1 in 7th grade and take Algebra 1 again in 8th grade. We have that a lot. We also have students who take Algebra 1 in grade 8, and then they'll take it again in grade 9. Nothing that happens in middle school shows up on their high school transcript. So it never shows anyone or anywhere that they're repeating a course. It just looks like they started high school at Algebra 1, like much of the country does. Perfectly normal. And so there's this advantage in middle school, and in that these changes of courses it doesn't follow you through life, right? Like you can do a do-over and it's fine. We welcome it. And the last thing I wanted to point out is that grade 8 geometry is an option, but students have to have successfully completed Algebra 1 already. You can't just choose geometry in 8th grade. You have to have completed Algebra 1 first. All right, so let's look at this in terms of how do you progress from grade 6 through, I'm going to go to geometry because that's, 10th grade, and those are the courses we're talking about. So normal progression as written in the national standards and in the state standards is to go grade 6 math, grade 7 math, grade 8, we call it introduction to algebra, but it is the grade 8 standards. Then in grade 9, Algebra 1, and in grade 10, geometry. That's the normal progression that the country expects of our students. We offer the opportunity to do 1 year of acceleration, where a student would do grade 6 math, grade 7 pre-algebra, and then in 8th grade, a student would take, we call it Algebra 1, but in middle school, it's actually grade 8 and Algebra 1 together in one course. And then in 9th grade, they would take geometry. That's a reasonably paced. It's still one intense course, but it's not every single year is super intense. Then we also have the option of 2 years of acceleration. So in grade 6, the student is learning all of the grade 6 and grade 7 standards by taking grade 6 pre-algebra. And then in 7th grade, the student is learning all of the grade 8 standards and the grade 9 standards in Intro to Algebra and Algebra 1 in one course. And then in grade 8, they take geometry. So in 3 years of middle school, keep in mind these are adolescents. It's a sort of tumultuous time for kids. So at this time in their lives, they are going to learn 5 years of mathematics in 3 years. It is intense. We have students who after 1 year are like, I need to get off this train. We have students who feel that way after 2 years. It is intense. I'm not going to say that it isn't. It was originally designed years ago as a gifted program, and over time has sort of through the access policy in particular has made it so anyone can choose it. But I don't recommend it for everyone. Like I said, like I said about grade 6 pre-algebra earlier, it's right for, it's truly like smooth and comfortable for about 25% of the kids, roughly. That's a rough estimate. And that's going to change from year to year, but that just gives you an idea. All right, so what do those progressions look like on this chart? The student could start in grade 6 math, take grade 7 math, and then take grade 8 Intro to Algebra. That's the very normal state standards, national standards progression. Another option would be to start in grade 6 math and go to 7 pre-algebra. And then after 7 pre-algebra, make a choice. After 7 pre-algebra, do I want to go to grade 8 Intro to Algebra, or am I ready for Algebra 1? Another progression would be to start in grade 6 pre-algebra. And depending how grade 6 pre-algebra goes, we have the dotted line, which goes to grade 7 pre-algebra. And sorry, I'm about to be kicked out. Okay. So after grade 6 pre-algebra, depending how that went, if they felt they need more time with that content, they will go into grade 7 pre-algebra. And or if everything went swimmingly well in grade 6 pre-algebra, they will move into Algebra 1. And then the following year, same thing. If Algebra 1 went swimmingly well, they'll move into geometry. If they feel they need more time with that keystone course of Algebra 1, then they will take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So then the question is, how do you decide what's right for your student? And the tricky thing about this access policy is that I'm not allowed to tell you. It has to be open choice. I'm not allowed to say, well, based on these 3 to 5 scores, state test scores and, other things we administer in school, this would be our recommendation. I'm really not supposed to interfere in the process in that way. But my experience is that parents find that kind of frustrating. They want some kind of guidance. And I do encourage you to talk to your child's current math teacher, whether it's 5th grade or 6th grade or 7th grade. They can give you specifics about what your child knows very well and where they're struggling and what that would mean for the next course they take. So they can give you that information. But we as a district will not just send out some statement saying this is what your child should do. At this point, we're not saying that. Okay, so in 5th grade, this is the hardest part because you're not already in the middle school system. By the time the child's in 6th grade or 7th grade already, they're already in the middle school system, and it's sort of easier to base your decision on what you're currently doing. But at 5th grade, we look for certain things, or I look for certain things that show me a student's readiness. And there are a lot more things about 5th grade that a student needs to know, but I've sort of picked the ones that are the highest level of operating, so that if a student can do these, they tend to be able to do a lot of other things too. So the first thing is fluently multiple and divide multiple digit whole numbers and decimal values without a calculator. We do not use calculators in middle school. If it's in a student's IEP or 504, of course they can use a calculator. But for the general crowd, no, we don't use calculators. We do not. It's not, we're trying to reinforce, first of all, once you get into pre-algebra and algebra, we're not dealing with large numbers. We're dealing with small numbers. It's not the numbers that are hard, it's the reasoning that's hard. So the calculator isn't going to help them as much as they think it's going to. But the other piece of it is we're trying to make sure they're actually able to do the computation and not, not be looking all over for charts and things to help them do the computation. So we do almost everything we do without a calculator. So I've given 2 examples of what that could look like: multiplication, division. I've shown it with decimals. Same thing with whole numbers. I just showed the harder problems. Next thing is what I would call number theory and number sense together, and that is applying order of operations, letters standing for unknown values, understanding factors, multiples, distributive property. So the first picture I've given you is about order of operations and knowing how parentheses change the value of that expression. And then a letter standing for a value. And then of course I've shown that's a way to use distributive property to do multiplication, but there's lots of ways to use distributive property. The next thing is sequence ordering and comparing fractions. That's on one number line. So on one number line, you're looking at fractions, improper fractions, unlike denominators, mixed numbers, and decimal values, and being able to understand their relative value, how they relate to each other. That's a really big deal because it's not just computational, it's actually having to understand the meaning and value of things and how they relate to each other. And then the last thing is add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions with mixed numbers and unlike denominators. I've given you 4 different operations, but the king of all elementary mathematics is being able to subtract mixed numbers with unlike denominators that requires regrouping. That's always like, I often would just, if someone's, I can use that one item to tell me a lot about what a child's able to understand and not able to understand based on the process they go through. Now, don't go home to your child and be like, and teach them these exact 4 problems or whatever. It's not about these problems. These are just examples of the kind of reasoning that is expected. If you're going to choose acceleration for your child, grade 6 pre-algebra, they should be fluent in all of this. It's not these problems, it's this kind of reasoning. All right, so over to grade 6 and 7, this is much easier. In grade 6 and 7, if they're in their current course, they're getting 75% or higher. They're understanding the math and their current level is just right for them. It's perfect. 75 or above, they're doing great. That means they're learning. If they're scoring 90% above without different supports, then they may want to consider moving up a level if there is a higher level course. I bolded and underlined if they want more challenge, because I'm often in Algebra 1 and geometry classes where the teacher has to say to the students, because the students are griping about how hard it is or something, being students. And the teacher would say, hey, this is a 10th grade class, or this is a 9th grade class. You chose to be here. And inevitably, there will be 5 students who say, I didn't choose to be here. My parents chose for me to be here. And so that's a little problematic on our end. Now, some of it, we understand kids say things. We get that. But if a child truly does not want to be learning math at this rate and is finding it frustrating, that's not going to bode well over the long term. They're going to resent it. They're going to get angry with it. They're going to get frustrated, and their brain's just going to kind of freeze, and they're not going to be receptive to learning. So make sure if they're going up a level that it's something they want, that they're hungry for more math. We love that. And then the other one is if they're, okay, so the next box is if their yearly average is 74% or lower, they're struggling with the math as it's taught. So that means their current math course is really challenging for them, difficult. And if they're in grade 6 pre-algebra, I would recommend that they take grade 7 pre-algebra the next year. And if they're in Algebra 1, I would recommend that they take Algebra 1 again the next year, whether they're taking it in 8th grade or 9th grade. I would recommend they retake Algebra 1 just because it is that keystone course that underlies everything else. And then my last statement there, underlined at the end, is students should not need a tutor for middle school math. I'm imagining I'm hearing screens. If they need a tutor to understand the math or to keep pace with the math, it's probably not the right course. And I say that with a bunch of confidence because, one, I've been dealing with middle school math now for 10 years. But in addition to that, we provide so many options for students to relearn, retake, go to conference period, get support, that if they need a tutor in addition to that, that is an awful lot of struggle that's happening with that student. And if they're in an accelerated class, and they need that much support, I'm like, why? There's no need to be doing that to a child. A 12-year-old, 13-year-old, why are we doing that? Right? It could be much more comfortable. They could be learning math without resenting it, without hating it, right? So we have to consider that. I know that people hire tutors with the best of intentions, and I know many of the tutors you're hiring, and there's some of my favorite people on earth. They're lovely teachers within the district. And I'm not trying to reduce their revenue stream, but I am trying to tell you of what's best for the student. And we provide so many opportunities for the students in school to learn and get support that if they need math explained another time, I'm really, and they're in an accelerated course, I really feel like they don't need, it's not doing them any service to be there. All right, other things to consider. All middle school math courses have a path to calculus. So if you take Algebra 1 in 7th grade, 8th grade, take it in 9th grade, no matter when you take it, you can still get to calculus by 12th grade, if that's your goal. It doesn't even need to be your goal. Lots of kids never get to calculus and they live a perfectly wonderful life. So just know that it might mean they take a summer course. It might mean they double up on taking 2 courses while at the high school, but regardless, they have that chance to get to calculus if that really is what their goal is. Next is each student develops abstract and multivariable reasoning at a different pace. This isn't about who's smarter than someone else. This is developmental. We don't look at babies who walk the soonest. Be like, oh, my baby walked at 8 months. He's going to be an Olympic runner. That's not how it works. That's not how developmental works, right? So there will come a time when Algebra 1 is the right timing for that student, and then they'll be great at it, right? It's not a matter of whether they can do math or not do math. It's just sort of how they think about it and what their mind is ready for in that moment. So, babies that walk early are not Usain Bolt. They're usually the smaller babies, by the way. Student success is a combination of math skill, fluency, and reasoning, response to challenging classwork and grades, and self-management and regulation. By that, the math skill and fluency and reasoning, that's obvious, that makes sense. The question about, or the comment about response to challenging classwork and grades, if a child is in an accelerated course in particular, and they might be getting C's for the first time in their lives, or a D on a quiz, something like that, how resilient are they to deal with that, right? That their response to it is going to determine their success. And a lot of that has to do with their age and how, I don't know, just how much they've had to deal with that in the past, and how they sort of roll with it or adjust to it. And along those lines is the self-management and self-regulation. The self-management and regulation have to do with, how do I respond to it? How do I ask for help? When the teacher says to come to conference period, do I actually go? When the teacher says you can take a retake or earn points back, do I actually do that work? Those things are all on the ownership of the child. And the teacher in middle school, we're very supportive, and we will remind them and we will give them opportunities to do it. And they will be told to please come to conference period. But it ultimately is up to the child. The teachers are not going to go to the child's locker at the end of the day and be like, come on with me. That is up to the child to own it and to self-advocate and be self-driven in that way. So those other factors, it's not all math. There's other factors that deal with it, that deal with how successful they can be. And then the last thing I would add is that all accelerated math courses will require summer assignments in 2024, this summer. We backed off on them for several years since COVID. We just sort of it was too complicated with everything with COVID. But now we're all sort of back on track after COVID. And so for the accelerated courses, we are going to put summer required work in place. And the purpose is to review and solidify previous learning, as well as expose them to some of the upcoming reasoning they will have to do. And then for other students who are not taking accelerated courses, we will provide work for them too if they want it. We're just not going to include it as part of their grade in any way. We're not going to require it of them, but it will be there. And you'll hear about that. We'll communicate that at the end of the year. All right, so we're back to this idea of a keystone. I've given you a lot of information to consider, and I have an interesting perspective in that I have been a district supervisor for, this is my 27th year. I've been in charge of middle school math for 10 years now. And on top of all of that, I am a parent of a Columbia High School senior who has been in the system kindergarten through 12th grade. And so I've seen what led up to the Keystone course, and I've seen what happened in high school after the Keystone course. And I'm on Soma Lounge and I see the parents who post, I need a physics tutor, blah, 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 right? And so as soon as I see those things, when my child was in those courses, I would go right into his Canvas, see what the assignments were. And so much of the time I'd be like, oh, that if the child was comfortable with Algebra 1, they wouldn't be having trouble with this physics assignment. And so I very quickly learned while my son was in high school that Algebra 1's feeding a lot more than the math program. It's also definitely playing a role in physics, and it has some role in chemistry, not as much as physics, but it is also, but in chemistry, you have to balance reactions, chemical reactions, and that's, balancing equations, what you need to do. All right, so Algebra 1 underlies success in geometry, Algebra 2, physics, and chemistry, without a doubt. And on top of that, since Algebra 1 underlies success in Algebra 2 then underlies success in pre-calculus and calculus, and you could extend that if you really wanted to into Calc 3 and AP Physics and other things. But you get the idea. Algebra 1 is this keystone course. Do not cut it short, right? Do not treat it as like, oh, I have to get to geometry. I have to get my child to geometry by 8th grade, when really the priority here is, when is the best time for my child to learn Algebra 1? When is the right time? Is that right time 7th grade? Is that right time 8th grade? Or is that right time when they are in 9th grade? So that's what I want you to take out of this idea of the keystone is, this course is so important that we've built a system where students can retake the courses pre-algebra to be ready for algebra, or they could retake Algebra 1 to make sure that they have it, because we know, as math teachers, we know how important it is for their later success. I think you'd actually be hard pressed to find any other course in any discipline that is as consequential to their later success. I hate to say that because I don't want to put that much pressure on it, but yeah, it is. And that's why we give multiple opportunities to be successful at it, multiple opportunities to be prepared for it, because we know it is that important. All right, so just reviewing, those are the courses. If you have a child in 5th grade, you're just choosing between two things, one or two. It's not, your decision is not irreversible. You're not committing them to their college at this point. You're just committing them to a middle school course. And as you've seen by all my arrows, we can reroute them. They can, if they try pre-algebra, we can at times move them down during the year. If we find that it's an immediate situation that we want the best option for the student, we will do that. The other option is they can retake pre-algebra, and the same thing with algebra later. So that's the gist of the presentation. I now want to bring up the Q&A. Oh, figure where it is. Zoila, can you see any of the Q&A so that you can start answering some while I'm figuring out how to make it appear here?
There's only three. You'll see it at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. You should be able to see Q&A.
You know what? Can you just read me the questions?
Absolutely.
I don't have to dig around.
Let's team up here. If you choose the 2-year acceleration where they do geometry in eighth, what math options are available in the high school?
So if you take, it says it on the chart that if you take geometry in 8th grade, then in 9th grade, the students would be taking algebra 2. And then the sequence after that is algebra 2, pre-calculus, calculus, if they're going the calculus route. Some kids go a different route and they'll put in statistics or discrete mathematics or other courses. But the state requirement is students have to take algebra 1, geometry, and usually algebra 2, but there are some options to algebra 2. But if they're in geometry, they're going to take algebra 2 the next year. All right. Any other questions?
Yep. If a child opts for the accelerated program for 6th grade and finds it too advanced, is there an opportunity to switch courses? And what is that process for changing?
Absolutely. If a child wants to switch during the year, you can let me know, you can let the teacher know, or you can let principal or assistant principal know. We all put our hands in that. But the most efficient probably ultimately is an assistant principal, because that's who actually makes it happen. But any of us can pass that information on, and we never say no to that, because we really don't want students to be stressed out. They're choosing to, like, you know what, this is just too much for, because what happens is 5th grade, they think, yeah, I want so much more, but they're not realizing how different middle school is from elementary school. To have all those different teachers changing rooms every 45 minutes, it's a lot. And so they sort of weren't able, they had no schema in which to understand how different their life was going to be. And so, yeah, we just move them down. It's not a big deal.
Okay, next question. What is the actual process for registering our selection? Is it in Power School?
It is in Power School, and it's in the letter. When you go into the parent portal into Power School, along the left-hand columns, there'll be something that's like course requests, I believe it's called. And when you, I no longer have a child in middle school, so I can't actually go in and look at it, but I know that it's along the left-hand column. You'll see one of the options will say course requests, and you'll click on that, and that will give you the options to choose the math course for your child. And then there's also like related arts or world language, some other choices that happen as well.
Can you share the presentation with us?
I know that we're recording it, and I will post it, but yeah, I think we could probably put the actual slides on the district website. I hate to say that because it's not my okay, like I don't have the authority to okay that, but I'm sure we could. I think we've done it before. We can put the slides up on the district website. I'm not proprietary.
Do the test scores we receive from their state tests give us an indication of the pathway we should choose?
The state test?
That is correct. Yes, the state test.
Well, I'll put it this way. If it says advanced proficient, you should feel pretty confident choosing acceleration. So in that sense, yes, because it's not easy to be advanced proficient on the state test. So I feel like that's probably a pretty good indicator of their math readiness. I don't know about the other aspects of their emotional readiness, but certainly their math readiness would be fine. But that doesn't mean, you know, some kids don't test well, but they could still be great students. And so I wouldn't use it as, anytime that we've ever used test scores for this sort of thing, we never use just one test. We look at 4 or 5 different things to get a better picture, because you know, testing is just one kind of atmosphere. It's not everything.
Next one. You mentioned that in 7th grade pre-algebra, the students wouldn't be tested on grade 8 concepts. Is that the same as in 6th grade pre-algebra? Will they just be tested on 6th grade concepts?
Nope. In grade 6 pre-algebra, 100% are holding them accountable to the grade 7 content. And that's because we're moving them into Algebra 1 the next year. That's what we're preparing them for. So we have to hold them to it. Whereas in the grade 7 pre-algebra, we introduce them to some of the grade 8 concepts, but we don't show it. We don't go into the full depth of it. An example of that would be a big topic in grade 7 math across the country is proportionality, and how, and part of that is graphing proportions, so that you graph a line of how the two variables are proportional to each other. And when you do that, you get a slanted line. If they are proportional, you get a perfectly, what would it be, 45-degree angle slanted line. But, and that's an introduction to learning slope in 8th grade, but slope doesn't always, it's not always a proportional slope, right? It could be all different kinds of slope. So we're sort of tiptoeing into these grade 8 ideas, but we're not teaching the full grade 8 idea. We're leaving that for when they take either grade 8 or the Algebra 1 course. But in grade 6 pre-algebra, they have to know all of the grade 7 by the end of that course if they're going to be ready for Algebra 1 the next year.
The next question, is course selection always granted? Is it 100% up to the parent?
I believe yes, and the only example I can think of not is if there are special ed services that require a self-contained room. That's a different situation in that we don't have self-contained pre-algebra, right? Like that's sort of a different situation. But other than that, I believe we do. And that doesn't mean we won't contact you and say, are you sure? Because we're looking at this evidence and we're concerned, but we will not stop you.
Right. And also the exception of, to get the geometry, you do have to take Algebra 1. So there's some that just are progression.
Right.
Okay. The next question, are all math courses, all levels in the middle school supported with ICS teachers?
Not, well, each course is, but not every section of each course. So if we will have an Algebra 1 section that has an in-class support teacher, but not every single period of Algebra 1, we just don't have that much staffing, to be honest. That we can put an ICS teacher in every single section of Algebra 1 or pre-algebra or any course. We just don't have that much staffing. So we put them in 1 or 2 sections. But every course has in-class support, yes.
They wanted to know if you can put up the path chart back up as you discuss. While you're doing
the one with the arrows, or
yeah, maybe the final one, I guess, with the arrows to kind of show the different.
that's what I feel like the arrows are the most instructive.
Yeah, I think that's the most helpful.
Yeah. It's there. Okay.
It's not being shown on the screen. Did you share the screen?
Get out of it and try it again.
You're probably going to have to share your screen again in WebEx because I think you stopped sharing to look at the Q&A. There you go. We see your browser now.
Yeah.
Right, but now I have to choose. It's not letting me choose the right window.
So click stop sharing at
Yeah.
the top, the orange one.
Yeah, I know. I see it.
And okay, you got it. There you
Pieces. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll explain later what was going on, but
Gotcha. All right.
So, okay, share. No, I want. And oh, I can't. There.
Okay. Next
see it?
question.
Okay.
Yeah. If your child is in the regular 6th grade math, but the teacher thinks the child can be in Algebra 1, can the switch occur? Our child is very advanced in math, but is very stressed already about moving to the middle school. So we want the transition to be less stressful at the beginning.
Well, there isn't a time where you would be in grade 6 or Algebra 1, unless there's some other extreme gifted type situation happening. That you're either in grade 6 or grade 6 pre-algebra. Those are the options. Now, if if your child has a gifted action plan, a GAP plan, that's a different deal. But I say that it is a different deal, and yet I'm talking about 1 or 2 kids per year in the whole district that kind of jump would occur to take Algebra 1 in grade 6. It's unheard of. They have to prove a tremendous amount of knowledge in order to be ready for that. So that wouldn't occur. But if I just take the general question and say, let's say they're in grade 6 pre-algebra, they're in grade 6, regular grade 6 math, and they decide later they should be in grade 6 pre-algebra. If it happens in like the first, I don't know, Mr. Brown might jump in and cut me off on this, but if it happens in like the first 2 weeks of school, we can probably make that adjustment. But to be honest with you, if it happens later than that, we can't move a child from grade 6 math into grade 6 pre-algebra because too much grade 6 pre-algebra has already happened. They will have missed too much. And so that's not something we do. And when we make that change, it's usually because they were new to the district, they moved in, they didn't understand the placement system, and we discovered it as soon as, they arrived with us. And so then we had to quick make an adjustment. But someone who's already been in the system, that just really doesn't happen.
The next one, super interesting and well presented, very clear. If we sign up for a grade 6 pre-algebra, what is the summer materials? Is it beneficial for us to work with her using other materials to get her familiar in advance of the school year? Or is the summer work, quotation marks, that you provide sufficient? Want to help her become familiar with at least the basic concepts if possible?
Well, our summer work that we will be assigning, and I'm being gentle with this because I haven't had an opportunity to get the full math department together for us to set up. We agree on everything before I talk publicly about it. And so I don't want to commit to exactly what each topic's going to be because we haven't all come to that consensus yet. And that's what we'll be working on over the next couple of months. But in general, it's reviewing the previous year. We will give some reasoning exercises that will allow them to try some of the higher stuff so they're exposed to it, but in no way is the summer work meant to pre-teach what they're going to be learning in their next course, simply because we like to teach it our way and not the way most computer programs teach new information. And so I actually don't love the idea of going ahead and teaching them something. But heck, if you have a 5th grader and they're going to 6th grade and you want to spend some time working with negative numbers, go for it. I'm never going to tell someone to do less math. I'm never going to say that.
Okay, the next one. Parents of 5th graders, should we be able to sign up our child for math now, or does that happen at a specific time? Will we get a notification or reminder to do it?
You will absolutely get a notification or reminder to do it. Grade 6 and 7 can do it now. Grade 5, you can't do it until we know what middle school you're going to. It's just a software issue with Power School that we'll lose. If you enter it now, I don't think you can. I think we have it closed off. But if you were to enter it now, we will lose it once you get assigned to a middle school. So we just have to wait until you're assigned to a middle school. And once that assigned, and that's coming soon, like, I don't know, in a week or two, 2 weeks maybe, it's coming up soon. And when that happens, then yes, we will send out an email blast reminder and saying it's time. And then if you don't sign up in the time, then you will be hearing from someone at your child's school saying, hey, you haven't signed up for a math class. So yeah, there'll be reminders.
Sorry you said this before, but if you repeat a class, for example, pre-algebra, is it repetitive material?
It's not repetitive like it's the same problems. It's repetitive like it's the same concept. Yes, it is. That's the whole point, is if they didn't learn it fluidly or flexibly the first time, we're giving them a second chance to relearn it. And yeah, so yes, it is repetitive because we're looking to make sure there's mastery.
Do you have any insight into trends for students with IEPs in general? Do you see most not start on accelerated courses, or is it totally on an individual basis and there are no generals you can speak to?
Excellent question. There are no generals I can speak to because it has everything to do with the level and type of support that's required. meaning we have students who might just have a visual disability and all we have to do is make the print larger. That has nothing to do with their ability to understand mathematics, right? Like, so same with hearing, or they're just, so there are things that have nothing to do with mathematical reasoning or mathematical content. And so they can accelerate same as anybody else can. There are situations where we have students who are, functioning below grade level, and then I wouldn't recommend that they accelerate.
Next question. If your child is doing really well in sixth grade math, can they move up to pre-algebra?
Yes. I would say check with the math teacher, but if they're doing well in grade 6, yes, take pre-algebra.
This one might be for me or Anne. Will there be online tutoring for students? They have that available now, and it has been hugely helpful. I guess, Anne, if you agree, right, we have to look at that at the end of the year. We kind of reevaluate all the programs and softwares and that we've purchased for the year, and then we determine for next year. So right now, I can't safely say absolutely, but we can say that we are going to consider all programs and see what we renew year to year. Is that correct, Anne or Keith? I know you do the technology as well.
That is correct, but we are also wrote out the grant for tutoring from the state of New Jersey. So we're also waiting to see if we received that grant. We did not receive it last year, but with the ARP grant funding ending this year, we would need that money to continue tutor.com.
Right. That's, I was actually going to jump in and say, ooh, tough budget times. But, not our best budget moment. But it's nice of you to say that it's been really helpful. That's good for us to hear, because it's not, we're not getting massive usership of something like that, but it's good to know it's making a difference for some people. Like, that's great. That's great to hear.
Next question. How do we find out about our middle school assignment? In PowerSchool, there's no class registration link for fifth grade yet.
I don't know how we find out. That's terrible. I don't know that, but that's not sort of under my wing. I'm assuming you will hear from your middle school principal but I could be wrong. I don't know. Does Keith know, or does Lewis know? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, that would be correct. The middle school principal
Yeah.
will be reaching out with like those instructions and next steps for all of that for the course selection.
That's what I would. That's what I would think, because it's their school. They're going to want to welcome you.
Yes, that's right.
Next question. Would you recommend our child's current fifth grade math teacher heavily weigh in on our decision? Are they even allowed to?
They are allowed to. They are nervous about it, but they are allowed to. And most of our fifth grade teachers are pretty experienced, and I've given them some pretty clear guidelines of, in addition to those things that I showed you all, this is what you should consider. They have more detail based on the units that they teach, like in this unit, this unit, this unit. So they know, and many of them have been teaching fifth grade for more than 10 years. I mean, I've known some of them for 20 years. So they know in their gut. They've visited sixth grade classrooms. They know what's happened with their previous students who moved on to middle school and who had success and who didn't. So they have a really good feel for it. There are some newer people who may not have that same intuitive sense, but they certainly know where the child is in terms of what they've mastered from fifth grade and what they haven't. So yes, they can tell you. They may be hesitant to, because nobody wants to be, everyone wants to think that we're giving our students every opportunity that we can, right? That's what we want to do. And so none of us want to be the one that's like, no, we don't want to be that person. And so they don't want to say that, but they will be very honest about what the child's doing well, and if they're struggling with anything. And if they say they're struggling with anything, that's your answer.
Okay, next question. What percentage of sixth graders in pre-algebra repeat in grade 7 pre-algebra? How is this repeating presented to the students, or how do students perceive having to repeat?
It's a small percent that repeat, because more of them drop down during the year. Like if they're in grade 6 pre-algebra, they'll drop down to grade 6 And so when they take grade 7 pre-algebra, they're not retaking the whole course because they didn't really take the whole course in 6th grade. I'd say it's pretty few that repeat the whole course because most of them just move down a level during the year. If Mr. Brown wants to jump in with actual numbers, he can do that. I just know that it's not that many. We have a lot more kids that move down during the year. And then we'll take grade 7 pre-algebra in 7th grade. That tends to be a better feeling from the kids, but my experience is the feeling from the students comes a lot from how the family views it. I mean, yeah, they're in middle school, so they're sensitive to what their peers think and all of that. But I assure you, their peers aren't thinking much about it at all. The peers are thinking about themselves and not about other kids. From the teacher standpoint, it's very just, it's just doing the dishes to us. Like, it's just like, this is what you need. This is what you should do. It's just very like, this is what has to happen. And so that's how we see it. We see it as this is the best support for you. So to us, it's a positive choice. Like, I have so many teachers, I hear their words in my head and they're like, I would really like you to do, or I would like you to try. And they say it like that because they just feel like it's a different avenue and not, this is not a life choice, right? This is just your middle school math course. But so from our perspective, it's not a big deal at all. It's completely normal. From a school perspective, it's not a big deal at all. It's completely normal. But there are some kids who feel like, especially the algebra 1, because you're retaking the exact same course again, that one is emotionally tough. And they'll be like, can't my child, if they took algebra 1 in 7th grade and it didn't go well, can they then take grade intro to algebra? And I was like, well, I mean, could, but why would you do that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So in terms of what the content is, it does not make sense. So I just better take the algebra 1 over.
Next one. What are the related grade 8 standards taught in grade 7 pre-algebra? Equations, functions?
Yeah, we'll extend with equations. We'll extend a bit with rational numbers. And then I was talking about the proportionality and slope. We'll tiptoe into that. Those are the sort of the ones that we all agree on, but depending on, sometimes things happen in a moment, right? Like you see that, oh my gosh, they're getting this. If they're getting this with exponents, what if I gave them a negative exponent? Would they totally get that, right? So sometimes we do things sort of intuitively in the moment, but the ones that we agree on are exactly, we'll move into some polynomial equations just because it's an easy expansion on what we've already done. We'll tiptoe into slope because it ties in so nicely into proportionality. And so those, and then rational numbers, we might even get into irrational numbers, but only in the sense that, like the square root of 3 is an irrational number, not like in depth on irrational numbers.
Okay, and I believe it might be the last one. Will a recording of this webinar be available?
I believe we usually put it on the district YouTube. Is that what we will do, Keith?
Yeah, that's correct. After this webinar, we'll clean up the beginning a little bit, and then we'll upload it to YouTube.
That's Keith politely saying I was in the wrong webinar. Yes, that's clean up the beginning. Now you have to clean up the end. So yeah, that yeah, it will be up there soon. And I was thinking earlier today, because a 5th grade teacher asked me that same question, like, will we post the recording? And I was like, oh, I should probably send that out as an email blast. Here's the recording. So yeah.
And that's it in terms of Q&A.
Fantastic. This is great. Feel like I should stand, like, is anybody adding anything?
I think covered it. Great.
All right. Wow, this was like, I didn't even think I'd get through my presentation in that amount of time. So I think it's great.
And people are saying thank you so much. Super helpful.
All right. Do you want me to stay on until 8:30?
Oh, I think you were super thorough, and I think that's why we have so few questions. And we'll put this up on the website so people can go and watch the whole thing. So I think it's great, Kim. Thank you so much. You really made it super clear to everyone.
So I went back to the first slide just so you could see my email again. So if anyone's still here, you can see there's my email. So if you have any individual questions, you can email me. You can email your child's teacher. Like I said, from 5th grade through 7th grade, they are so used to this process. They've been through it many times. And if they're not sure on a question, they will just send it to me. So feel free to email us. And thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to my colleagues for making this team sport.
Everyone saying thank you. Thank you. Super helpful. Excellent. Many thanks. Thank you.